On a crisp September morning in Washington, a declaration from the White House reverberates across international circles. President Donald Trump suggests that U.S. sanctions on Turkey's defense sector could end almost immediately. The words were brief, but their implications stretch far beyond the walls of the press briefing room. For Ankara, this is more than an announcement. It is a potential turning point. For Washington, it is a gamble that could reshape alliances, test loyalties, and challenge the delicate architecture of international diplomacy. The sanctions in question were not minor. They targeted the Turkish defense industry at its core, restricting access to vital technologies and limiting cooperation within NATO. Imposed in response to disputes over military purchases and Ankara's growing assertiveness in the region, they signaled Washington's willingness to confront even its long-standing allies. Yet now, in a striking pivot, President Trump signals that those very restrictions may soon be history. To understand the significance, one must look back at the recent trajectory of US-Turkey relations. Once seen as an anchor of NATO's southern flank, Turkey has in recent years carved an increasingly independent path. Its purchase of Russian missile systems, its military campaigns in Syria, and its tense standoffs with European neighbours have placed it at odds with Western capitals. Sanctions, therefore, were designed both as punishment and as leverage, a reminder that actions outside the NATO consensus would not come without cost. But geopolitics rarely stands still. Turkey's position straddling Europe, Asia, and the Middle East remains too critical to ignore. Its cooperation is needed to manage migration flows, counter terrorism operations, and the delicate balance of power in the Eastern Mediterranean. In this context, the White House now faces a choice: maintain sanctions as a show of resolve, or remove them as a gesture of pragmatism. President Trump appears to favor the latter, wagering that engagement will bring Turkey back into closer alignment. Supporters of the move argue that the sanctions have backfired, driving Ankara deeper into Moscow's orbit and opening doors for Chinese influence. They contend that lifting restrictions could re-establish trust, revive defense cooperation, and stabilize NATO cohesion at a time when unity is under strain. Critics, however, warn of the opposite. They argue that lifting sanctions too quickly, without securing meaningful concessions, risks emboldening Turkey's assertive policies. It could also signal weakness, undermining Washington's credibility not just in Ankara, but in capitals around the globe. The timing is no coincidence. Trump's statement comes on the eve of a high-stakes meeting with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Behind closed doors, discussions will likely cover far more than sanctions. Defense procurement, regional security, energy corridors, and Turkey's delicate balancing act between East and West are all expected to be on the table. For both leaders, this is an opportunity to recast relations, but for very different reasons. Erdogan seeks relief, recognition, and a freer hand in pursuing national interests. Trump seeks leverage, headlines, and perhaps a demonstration of his unconventional diplomacy. In Washington, the reactions are predictably divided. Some lawmakers hail the president's pragmatism, noting that sanctions have done little to curb Ankara's ambitions. Others bristle at the prospect of rewarding what they see as defiance. Editorial boards, think tanks, and policy experts warn that too much haste could unravel years of painstaking diplomacy. Yet, within Trump's inner circle, speed is part of the strategy. Almost immediately is not just a phrase, it is a signal of intent. Beyond US borders, Europe watches carefully. For NATO allies in Brussels, Paris, and Berlin, Turkey is both indispensable and unpredictable. The alliance depends on Ankara's strategic location, but struggles with its unilateral actions. The lifting of sanctions without coordination could send shockwaves through an already fragile alliance. At the same time, failure to reconcile with Ankara risks pushing Turkey further from the Western fold, a scenario that could permanently alter NATO's role in the 21st century. The consequences ripple outward. In the Middle East, regional powers track the developments with caution. Syria, Iraq, and Iran all factor into Turkey's calculations, and by extension, Washington's choices. Russia, too, sees opportunity. Should the US falter, Moscow will be ready to deepen defense ties with Ankara, expanding its influence across NATO's doorstep. Beijing, likewise, would welcome any rift in Western cohesion, offering investment and cooperation where others hesitate. For President Trump, however, the calculus is often more immediate. His words, designed to dominate headlines, frame the story as one of swift action and decisive leadership. Diplomats may wrestle with nuance, but the president thrives on bold declarations. Whether this is a tactical maneuver to strengthen his hand at the negotiating table or a genuine shift in policy remains uncertain. What is clear is that both allies and adversaries are now recalibrating their expectations. As the meeting with President Erdogan approaches, the world waits. Will sanctions be lifted in a matter of hours, as Trump has suggested? Will Ankara, in turn, offer concessions that reassure Washington and its allies? Or will this moment mark yet another unpredictable twist in a relationship that has oscillated between cooperation and confrontation for decades? For now, only one certainty remains. The words spoken in Washington have already set events in motion. They raise questions not only about US-Turkey relations, but about the very nature of American foreign policy under Trump's leadership. Impulsive or strategic, conciliatory or confrontational, the coming days will reveal which path the White House intends to follow. And for Turkey, for NATO, and for the balance of power in a volatile region, the consequences could be profound.